you're trying to make municipal leaders aware that the Ford government's cuts impact Northwestern Ontario, perhaps more so than the rest of the province.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a government now that is doing exactly what the last government did, which is not recognizing the unique, specific needs of Northwestern Ontario. And so, whether it's cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, cuts to northern development and forestry and mines and agricultural rural affairs and Indigenous affairs, all of these things are going to have a much bigger impact on Northwestern Ontario, and it is going to hurt.
When you look at the public health units and the paramedic service providers, if those get cut down to 10, how does the geography of Northwestern Ontario compound that issue?
Well, I mean, we already have municipalities in and around the Northwest that, for example, are short ambulance services already. For example, I mean, there are places where ambulances are being used for patient transfer because there's no patient transfer services, and then that takes those ambulances off the road completely for an emergency if it were to arise. These kinds of specific characteristics of ambulance service in the North are not being thought of by this government. I mean, if you go down to 10 providers, with the vast geography of the North, with the amount of communities around Northern Ontario, where places where there's no 911 service, places where you can't even really access, a reliable GPS signal. I mean, this is all of these things are going to be extremely detrimental to Northerners being able to have reliable access to 911 and to ambulance service.
I asked Judith Monteith-Farrell after the budget was released, but you look at some of the ministries where the Ford government made their most significant cuts, natural resources and forestry, Indigenous affairs, and northern development and mines. There's a case to be made that those three ministries are some of the most impactful on Northern Ontario. What kind of messages does that send to the region to see those kind of cuts to those areas?
Well, it sends a pretty clear message to Northern Ontario and to the Northwest that your needs are not important to this government. That the very ministries that provide huge amounts of service to municipalities and communities are being slashed to the quick, and that's going to impact not only those services, but those are also jobs. I mean, those are well-paying jobs that sustain families in these communities as well, and those jobs are going to be gone, and that's just going to pull more money out of local economies and create a more difficulty for municipalities in terms of their ability to keep population in communities that are losing population. I mean, the whole budget is a hit. It's a big hit on Northern Ontario.
A lot of Northern Ontario municipalities, I mean, they're single or even no industry towns at this point. If you are looking at potential cuts to the Municipal Partnership Fund or some of those community infrastructure funds that you mentioned, I guess, how hard is it when there really isn't that cushion or a margin for error that larger centers might have?
Well, I mean, it's devastating. We know that many of these communities, they operate their community on a shoestring already. To see them, the government go backwards on things like the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, reducing the money that's in that fund instead of enhancing it, it's dragging our province backwards, and it's making those communities even more at risk when it comes to population loss and ability to stay afloat. I mean, I can recall municipal elections not so far away, not so long ago, where some communities didn't even have people running for the position of mayor because the communities were at such risk that it was a huge undertaking to even imagine becoming the mayor to try to manage, the challenges that the community faces.
Going back to public health, and I apologize, I'm kind of setting you in a circle here.
Okay.
But I mean, in addition to the consolidations and the amalgamations, there's also the plan to change from the 75-25 model to 50-50 province and municipalities, I believe, by 2021. Do you believe that's a start of more downloading onto municipalities?
Well, I think what we're going to see pretty clearly, not only in health, but in public health, but all the way around, the cuts, the deep cuts that are in this budget are already going to create downloading for new municipalities. Because, as I said in my speech, municipalities are losing support from the provincial government, and so. How do they make up for that? Whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, whether it's in social services or land ambulance. I mean, or public health. I mean, the bottom line is municipalities want to provide service to their residents, and so they're going to be forced with decisions about whether to pick up those services and try to make up for the costs that the loss that the government's creating by withdrawing funding, or they'll watch their residents continue to suffer and to have a more difficult life, and that's not what people want in the north. People in Northern Ontario want life to be better, not worse. And this government's going to make it worse and make it harder for municipalities to maintain a good quality of life.
Education Minister Lisa Thompson said that there will no involuntary loss of jobs, and that the government has set aside 1.6 billion to protect the school board from attrition. What do you think of this announcement?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen the details of the announcement, but it's pretty clear that when Mr. Ford made the promise on the campaign trail that he was going to cut the expenditures in this province but not touch education or healthcare, that he wasn't telling the truth. And now we're seeing the fallout of that. So I haven't heard from school boards yet what they think of this salvo that Mr. Ford's throwing out there. But what we do know is the education system is not going to provide the kinds of supports and opportunities and choices that students need to be able to succeed. And that's and as we know, in small communities, in northern communities, in rural communities, we've already seen too many schools close, and we see too many kids being stacked into classrooms that are of different grade levels and of different capacities, and we're going to see that worsen. We're going to see that become much, much worse.
Another sort of facet of healthcare changes, I guess, what are your thoughts on the plan to, OHIP will no longer cover emergency medical care outside of the country, not outside of the province, just outside of the country. What's your reaction to that? Because sort of the justification was that private insurance can do it better, but not everyone has.
Not everyone has private insurance, and it's the wrong thing. It's the wrong thing to do. Nobody voted for a government to cut back on OHIP. In fact, quite the opposite. People want to see OHIP expanded. They want to see public health care expanded, and this government is doing the opposite. So folks who are traveling who don't have private insurance are going to have to dig into their pockets and buy more private insurance, and that's it's just going to make life more unaffordable for everyday folks and create unfortunately, I think situations where people are not even going to bother to get insurance, and then they could be in big trouble when they travel. So again, this is a wrong-headed move, and the fact that they put this out there with only a couple of days of consultation before they're going to implement it is absolutely it's unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. People expect to have a voice when it comes to changes like this, and this government ramming something like this through is completely wrong.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Sorry, I have to catch a plane.